Hello, welcome or welcome back. My name is Joanna if you're new here, and today I'm doing the Why Haven't I Read These Books Yet tag. I was tagged by Alex from Tall Guy Reads. He is fantastic. He has such a great review style and has a way of making you want to read every book he's excited about. He's also just one of the nicest, most cool people on BookTube. And I was also tagged by Ben from the new channel, Books with Genghis Khan, and Ben is fantastic as well. He has read Malazan Book of the Fallen and Dresden Files, and he's off to a very strong start on his channel. So I loved his answers to this tag and was so honored to be tagged by Ben and Alex. Definitely check out both channels. I will link their videos down below. And I love the idea of this tag because I think we're all guilty of kicking books down the TBR for whatever reason. I know I am anyway. So I have a hard time narrowing down answers for this tag. I may have to add a couple of books per category, but we'll see how I do. And the first category is classic books. And so why haven't I read so many classic books? And I feel like the thing with classic books is I often hear people say that they had to read so many classic books when they were in grade school and that everybody had to read the same books. But I feel kind of embarrassed because I feel like there are several classic books that I haven't read that everyone else seemed to have read, and I don't know how I got away with that. I have read a handful of classic books, and I don't feel upset that I was ever quote-unquote forced to read any of them. I actually enjoyed every single classical book I've ever read and actually want to reread every single one I've read. But I do think it's kind of hard for me to prioritize classical literature because I think it does take up some time and space and patience, and those books are just best consumed when you can have in-depth discussion about those type of books. I guess you can consider some fantasy the same way, but yeah, it's hard for me to prioritize classical literature for that reason. But anyway, the books that come to mind, one is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I know this is a very popular book and that it's not terribly long. Why haven't I read it? I don't know, but I have watched Salome by Richard Strauss, which the libretto is by Oscar Wilde, and I don't think any part of that libretto was changed. It is a very dark opera, but it is fantastic. And so I have a feeling I would really enjoy The Picture of Dorian Gray, just given the premise alone. I don't know why I haven't read it yet. The other one that comes to mind is Don Quixote by Cervantes. And I know this is one of the most famous works of literature, and my father considers it his favorite book of all time. I just recently learned that.
My favorite book is Don Quixote de la Mancha.
So that's one that I feel a little embarrassed that I haven't read. And then another one is War and Peace, which I learned is my mother's favorite book of all time, which I also didn't know about until recently. And I just think it would be really fun to read that book and then have in-depth discussions with my mother about it because she has such a way of discussing books. I could talk about books with my mom all day long. She has a way of discussing the prose and layers and subtext in such a fascinating, interesting way. So I would just love to learn about that book through my mother and read it. There are so many books, though, that fit this category. I could probably do a whole separate video, as I mentioned, but those are the three that come to mind for right now. And then next category is fiction book. Why haven't I read, and what kind of fiction book? Because there are so many, and fantasy is considered fiction, as well as sci-fi and historical fiction. So I'm going to go with historical fiction, and I'm going to say, why haven't I read Shogun by James Clavell? Because that's also a very famous historical fiction book. My mother loves that book as well. I think my father read and loved that book. It's a Japanese samurai story. And my friend Josh from the channel Red Fury Books did a review of this book. He loved it. He considered it his favorite book of the year so far. I think it's still his favorite. I'll have to ask him. But in any case, I've heard phenomenal things about Shogun, and it is one I definitely want to read someday. Another one that comes to mind is the famous Western Lonesome Dove, and I know that Josh named that book for this category, I believe. I actually watched the TV miniseries adaptation when I was a small kid, and I still remember it. It left a deep impact on me. I don't remember all the details, but I do remember the character of Gus and what happened to Gus. And it stayed with me all these years, so I would love to read that book someday and see what it's like to experience that through the literary form. And then next is a nonfiction book. And why haven't I read? And I'm going to go with the Diaries of Virginia Woolf for this one because I have recently gotten back into the practice of journaling. That's a practice I've kept up with my whole life. I have been journaling or keeping a diary since I was old enough to write. And for some reason, Virginia Woolf just keeps coming up in conversation lately on videos I've been watching. In fact, I just recently watched a video of Christiane Jones and her taking some time to dedicate herself to the writing routine of Virginia Woolf by keeping a diary and writing in a diary every day. And I'm sure I would have a similar experience if I read Virginia Woolf's works and compared my own to it and feeling like, wow, I do not know how to write, but you know, I think that there's something really special about that practice, and I'm so glad that I've kept it up even though I haven't been 100% consistent over the years, because it's one thing to remember an event in your life from your past. It's a whole other thing to look back in your journal and read what you actually thought about a certain event that happened to you. So even though my diaries are very cringy and very embarrassing, I'm still glad that I kept up that practice and that I can look back and reflect on those experiences in that way. Next one is a genre book. And of course, the genre is not specified, but I'm going to go with fantasy. And I'm going to say, why haven't I read Knight of Knives by Ian C. Esselmont? I don't know, but I really need to. Ian C. Esselmont is a creator of the Malazan world along with Steven Erikson. Steven Erikson gets a lot more attention because he wrote the 10-book series that most people talk about. But there are several other series in the Malazan universe and several other books, and many of them are written by Ian C. Esselmont. So I think that Knight of Knives is going to be my entry point into Ian C. Esselmont's works. I know that Philip Chase is a very big fan of this author, and I've enjoyed watching discussions on various channels with Ian C. Esselmont, including on Philip's channel and on AP's channel. So I have no doubt that I would really enjoy his books. So looking forward to Knight of Knives. I will get to that at some point, and I regret that I haven't gotten to it yet. Last one is a book that's been on my shelf the longest, and for that I am going with this book, The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker. And so I got this book in 2020, and I don't know why I haven't read it yet, but it is a completed trilogy at this point. I do have some friends that struggled with this first book, but the people I know who have finished the trilogy had nothing but praise for it. So I think it might be a matter of trusting the author to set things up. And it is a nautical book. It has some nautical terminology, a glossary in the back. So I am very curious about it. I like the concept of ships made out of bone, and I like nautical fantasy. The question is whether I will start this before Live Ship Traders by Robin Hobb. I will have different expectations for these two. I think they're going to be doing different things, but I just have a strong feeling I will enjoy the Bone Ships, and I will get to this at some point. And now to tag some people. I'm going to tag Brittany from Books with Brittany because I would just love to hear Brittany's answers to this. She is so well read in literary fiction, fantasy, horror, sci-fi, so many genres. So I think she's going to have some great answers to this if she does it. I would just love to see her video on this. And then next person I'm going to tag is Angela from the channel Do Unicorns Read. And that is such a fantastic channel. I highly recommend, especially if you like watching videos that break down a book in an analytical way. She has a fantastic approach to analysis on her channel, and I just have so much admiration and respect for her. She's fantastic. So definitely check her out, and I would love to see her answers to this. And then lastly, I'm going to tag my friend Matt from Matt on the Books. He is a new channel, and he is also fantastic, has a great review style. He is rereading Malazan Book of the Fallen, and he is presenting review videos on each book in such an approachable way. And he also talks about the cover art design for books and some constructive criticism of things that he would adjust about the cover art and how it fits. It's so cool to hear his analysis of that as well. So I'm enjoying his channel quite a bit. I love all three of these channels and hope you subscribe to all of them if you're not already subscribed. And I would love to see their answers to this tag. And I want to thank Alex and Ben for tagging me in this tag. It was a lot of fun. If you have any answers in the comment section below, feel free to let me know what they are and let me know your thoughts on any of my answers. And if you want to do this tag, also, please feel free to do the tag. I'd love to see your answers to it. And that is it for now. Thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.